It is myself, George, as usual. Today, unfortunately, I'm not joined by Alex. I'm all alone, left in the wilderness. Unfortunately, Alex is currently smashing through all of his exams and making sure that he is as good and prepared as he can be for what he's got coming up. It's important to have that kind of thing sorted and to be on top of those things. But this week, we're going to get ourselves sorted and be on top of Hungary. Not as like a country sense or in any kind of weird way. We're just on top of it. The Hungaroring, the racetrack. That's where we're at this evening. That's where we're going to be doing battle. And, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been a bit lazy. I haven't checked up on what the results were out of last week. But I suppose why need to when we can just check out this beautiful track. It's been part of the F1 calendar for a long, long time. High downforce, high speed, 14 corners. Great circuit with very, very few overtaking opportunities, though. So you might see a lot of close racing, but not a lot of overtaking. Anyway, it's one of those really exciting tracks to get into. So let's not waste any time and let's just crack on and do it, shall we? It's going to be me alone, so just prepare for some slightly awkward silences or some peculiar breaks while I drink some water or anything of the like. Can't be expected to speak all the time now, can I? Also, if you are a chatter, if you have anything you wanted to say to me, I do not read chat while I'm commentating. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to see it, just as a by-the-by. Okay, so last time out, Lilian did not start. The race winner was Timo Zelenkovic. A good result. Oh, no, sorry, it wasn't. It was actually Liam Stevens. Timo Zelenkovic ended up not scoring points last week. Second place went to Matteo Longe, is that? What a topsy-turvy race that seemed to have been. Well, interestingly enough, it was Noel Carman who took home P2 honours, and as such, slots himself into P2 in the championship ahead of Andre Lopez, who only scored 2 points last weekend. So as such, interestingly, we have quite a fair amount to talk about. I mean, obviously, Lilian is still far and clear away at the top of the championship. We still have 48 points down to about 34 points, covering, I think, the top 7, well, apart from Lilian, so second through 7th, which is a super, super duper interesting field. And of course, we only have 3 rounds left, including this week. So we have Hungary, Saudi Arabia, or Jeddah, as many of you may know it, next week, and then Interlagos, Brazil, as the final week of the season. So it is going to shape up to be quite the good show. Anyway, we're getting qualifying laps out of our drivers now. Menno Nielsen, the first person on a lap at the moment, or at least the first person that we're going to be on board with. That is a solid second sector, but now into the third sector. One of the ones where it's most almost easy to make a mistake. You have a lot of these long radius corners where you're almost just begging to get on the throttle as early as you can, and you can get the rear to step out on you very, very easily if you are on that throttle just a little bit too prematurely. Tripkov takes pole at the moment with a 15.487, only to be usurped by Nissen as he crosses the line with a 15.403. There is a McLaren that has just finished the lap. That is Franek Morowiak, who's just dropped into P1. Now we're going to start seeing some lap times coming on in. There's an Aston Martin of Geltech, which has just crossed the line. Who else is on a lap? Is that Dehar Demircioglu currently coming in? Yes, it is, but there's also Jensen Randall, who slotted in with a pretty unrepresentative lap time so far. So let's just keep our eyes peeled for Andre Molnar coming in with a 15.224. Now, here comes Dehar Demircioglu. Had a bit of a tumultuous season so far, and that doesn't look like it's improving at the moment. Felipe Sousa now starting his lap. There is, I think, Boris Plesnica, who's just dropped in behind as well in P7. So a good handful of laps coming in so far, but Rishan Jacobs, and I apologise, Rishan. I know a couple of weeks ago I was accidentally referring to you as Rishan Smith. That's wires crossed in my head between you and another driver I used to commentate over seasons ago. So I'm really, really sorry for that. I don't mean to get names wrong on purpose, but now I can see that you've changed from Papa Pace just to being Rishan Jacobs, the man himself. So I wish you luck, and that is a sensational way to start the session for yourself. That is a 15.084. That is a whole whopping 1.5, nearly 0.2 of a second faster than anybody else on track at the moment. Of course, we do have Felipe Sousa, Lilian, Timo Zelenkovic, and Bartosz Amaro still yet to post a time. In fact, Zelenkovic will be someone let's have a good look at. obviously has shown since his induction into Formula 3 that he has a great deal of pace to demonstrate. And right here with a purple sector 2, that is being demonstrated. Into the final sector now, long sweeping radius corners, trying to get that power down as early as you dare, but he has invalidated his lap time, unfortunately. So this one won't count for Zelenkovic. We'll have to see what Lillian or Bartos Samaro have got ready to cook with. Lillian starting his lap now. Championship leader by quite some way. The Frenchman really quite dominant in this series so far. I think almost a full 40 points, not quite, 36 points ahead of his competition. But with a win today, I'm sure Lillian will be able to secure that 40-point advantage quite easily, especially considering as Noel Carman at the moment is not troubling that top step. So far, so good for Lillian. No invalidations just yet, and we're coming up to one of the corners now where it is most easy to invalidate. It's clean, very tidy on the exit, nearly getting all wheels off the track, but keeping it tidy. Same again here on the exit of, I think that's turn 5. Now into the chicane, nice and slow, but also got to make sure that minimum apex speed is maintained, and that's pretty much the name of the game for this entire circuit. Minimum apex speed. You've got so many of those fast corners. You want to make sure that you are carrying as much corner speed from one corner to the next, because it can all matter. It does all flow together here at the Hungaroring. Lots of curb taken on the entrance to the corner. It looks a little bit snappy in places this lap, especially towards the end of Sector 2 there, but nice traction found in the penultimate corner. Now in the final corner, a tad wide on entry, but manages to get it tucked into the apex. Let's see what this lap time will be for the championship leader. It is close. It is a 15.125, but it is still 0.04 of a second behind Rishan Jacobs. So, solid start for everybody here. Just Bartos Samaro left to go. He's going to slot in P9 with a 15.419. So, this, so far, looking like it is shaping up to be quite the potent session. I think we might have some drivers even back out on track now for a second bite at the cherry, if I'm not mistaken. James Tripkov was the first driver to set a lap time in this session, and he will be the first driver to set a second lap time in this session too. He has Franek Morowiak for company just behind him, and then I think the Red Bull of Korn de Bakker with Andre Molner just leaving the pit lane. So this will be your little trio to keep your eyes on for the moment. Tripkov, what have you got for us? A bit of a feast or famine type guy over the season so far. Either scores strong or doesn't really score at all. So we'll have to see whether Hungaroring, the Hungarian circuit, can give him some consistency, or at least a good result this time out. He only has a few races left to get this together. That was a very untidy chicane. Took a little bit too much on the inside of the left, and that raised curve can massively unsettle the car. I think he's bailing out of this lap now. This has been pretty shoddy through the second sector, so I wouldn't be surprised whether we see just Tripkov roll out of this one and have a second bite of the cherry in another lap's time. But here comes Franek Morowiak on an invalidated attempt, so not really representative of what he's going to be able to do either, which leaves just Korn de Bakker, another invalidated attempt for the Red Bull driver here. So we have a few drivers now coming out to second laps. I think Jaltek is on one of those. It's looking at least. Oh no, this has got to be a. This has got to be a an outlap, surely, or a second go lap, because we're currently 53 seconds into the lap time and we're not even out the second sector yet. So I don't think this is a lap time from Jaltek. Having that being said, I could have miscalculated this horribly. No, 7 seconds off the pace. Okay, I am correct. Dehar Demircioglu, then, what have you got to bring to the table? Has been a bit of a erratic driver, shall we say, this season. I wouldn't say that he's been dangerous or reckless, but just often connection issues plaguing him, or a couple of, interesting driving decisions, shall we say. But by no means a slow driver, just sometimes a difficult driver to pitch where they stand in the standings. But for now, it's 12th place. Not a particularly bad lap time at all. But speaking of good lap times, here is Andre Molnar. 0.06 of a second up on his previous best through the first sector. Now got to try and keep it tidy and conserve that momentum in through the second sector. Trying to get it as wide as possible for the entry into that corner. Now swinging it left before sweeping it back right. Slight lift in these qualifying conditions as you go through that corner. Now down this very, very small back straight. A purple sector 2 if it's to be believed. Nicely tidy on the exit. Now just these final 2 corners to go, but often the most difficult. A lot of time to be made up as the track evolves and as the traction is starting to be found. Molnar now just rolling it on the throttle, progressively getting further and further applied, and it is going to be pole position for Andre Molnar. It's 2.5 seconds, well, 2.5 tenths, sorry, worth of an improvement, and that is into the 14s we go. Molnar, at his home Grand Prix, puts together an absolutely stellar lap time, and that's Matteo Longay, also slotting in second place as well. Excuse me, I don't know if you caught the enemy coughing there. I think my finger slips and accidentally unmuted myself. If you did, I really, really apologise. Rashan Jacobs, anyway, currently, oh dear, Ben Nitro disqualified from the session. That's not what you want to see. I believe that's Nitro Shooter, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Rashan, what have you got? Currently, not much. This is not a push lap, I think. Maybe a mistake was made somewhere on this lap, and as such, Rashan has decided to roll out of it. What have we got then? Who else is on track right now doing a respectable lap? Well, that is Liam Stevens finding his way through up the inside. Now, I don't think this is a push lap either, considering the wide entry in towards the final corner, but that's going to get him the slingshot onto the straight for the best possible run into turn 1. We'll see what this lap unfolds to be here for Liam Stevens. Braking all the way down to, I think, second gear. A lot of people dip into for the apex, but it's back up to 4th for traction on exit. Short shifting in this game is truly the saviour. Now, another one of these long radius corners. Lots of time to be gained here if you can get the line and the traction right. Quick flick right. Careful not to invalidate on the inside or on the exit curb. And same again here up through turn 5. Very, oh, I was going to say, a lot of curb taken on the inside there for Liam Stevens, and it was, in fact, an invalidation. So let's check back in with Rashan Jacobs. No, an invalidation for him too. What about Menno Nissen? Well, this is looking like a pretty respectable lap thus far. Certainly pushing on. Actually, never mind. I lied. It is 12 seconds off the pace because this is not the lap that Nissen was looking for at the moment. That is... someone's just dropped into the running order there, and I'm not quite sure who it is. I think it's Mr. Tripkov who's just finished a lap time. And as such, never mind. There we go. Okay, I completely missed it. Lillian has just slotted in back on pole position. So normal service has been resumed for the Frenchman. Just a meager 8 thousandths faster than his teammate Andre Molnar in the Alfa Romeo. But still, Alfa Romeo's working well here today. Both the drivers have been pretty much on point throughout the course of this season. Obviously, Lillian more so in a league of their own, but let's not get it twisted. It could be Lillian to upset the Hungarian party today. This is not what Andre Molnar would have wanted to start, but there's Franek Mariak, by the way. After we saw him have a bit of a dire opening lap, he's put in a second one, which is now 15.0. So these lap times are coming on down. Rashan not able to put a lap time in that was representative of the pace that he had. I think maybe a couple too many mistakes. And now for Timo Zelenkovic, also slotted in 6th place. A couple of attempts back of where he might otherwise like to be. Hoping this week, I suppose, not to get involved in any early race incidents. So wants to start qualifying a little bit better than he has been so far. Looking further down the field, Geltec currently on I think an out lap, but despite the fact it doesn't say so. So maybe a mistake made in the opening portions of this lap and just taking it easy. Horn de Bakker, another driver on what could be an in-lap. And Liam Stevens, I think we already know, on an in-lap too. It's just actually dropped into the pits. So this will now be the calm before the storm, I think, for most drivers here. Almost everybody will be siphoning back into the pit lane. Everybody but Deha Demircioglu, by the looks of things, who will be going for a very out-of-sequence lap here. Really pushing on now as that ERS. Oh no, that was the push lap. I saw the red light flashing and thought, what's going on here? Okay, never mind. Anyway, Deha Demircioglu, great lap actually from the Turkish driver. 7th place. That is exactly what you want to see out of the Turkish man. He's been struggling this season to find consistency and to find pace, but that is a very respectable lap time. It just has to get round now and get another lap in. I think that's going to be a little bit tight on time for the Turks, so everybody else may be relegating him just that little bit further. That's not what you want to see, but hey, it's at least indicative that there is something to write home about for Demircioglu. It's always a good thing. So, who's going to blink first inside of the pit lane? That is a Haas, but is it the Haas of Matteo Longe or Bartos Samaro? It is the former of the two, Longe Jr. Heading out of the pit lane now. See what this Haas can cook up. Well, it is going to be the final run in qualifying starting now. I'm excited. These drivers have been putting in a week's worth of practice. Hopefully, they're all going to have some good results or some good times here. I don't want to see too many invalidations, because when you get invalidations on the final run, that's where it kind of goes, yeah, you could have done a bit more. It could have been more exciting. This track is killer for them when you're pushing the limits. The limits of this track really are all in the curbs and how much you dare take on the entrances to some of these corners, especially up the hill, top of the hill, turn 4 and 5, for example. So, Matteo Longe, as he rounds this final sector, he is going to be the first driver to put on these final fresh set of soft tyres and push for that pole position. Currently resides in P3. Great lap time, but it is just a little bit too close for comfort behind him. He definitely has the pace to get up to those times ahead of him, but it's whether the Alfa Romeos can improve. So here we go for Matteo Longe. Wide start to the lap, coming straight on down that start-finish straight. Let's see what he has got. The young driver looking to try and make his mark here in F3 of PSGL. Already good traction off the first corner, trying to keep it nice and tidy. Don't want to see that rear snapping out of line or misbehaving in any kind of way. I just hope he doesn't get impeded by the wealth of traffic that is coming up ahead of him here. They better look in their mirrors. They better know that this guy is coming. There is one of the Alfa Romeos, just making sure it gets out of the way. It's an electric first sector from Matteo Longe, currently on course for pole position if he can keep this one up. That's nicely got out of the way there by the Alfa Romeo. Does not impede Longe in any shape or form. Nicely through the chicane as well for the young man. Now just got to try and keep it tidy through the rest of this second sector. It's very technical, it's very fast, and it's very easy to make a mistake. Quick snap of oversteer on the exit of that corner. Just got to keep it nicely tucked in. It's so far so good. Lost a little bit of time compared to that first sector throughout that second, but it's still going to be good enough for pole position if he can keep this up. Now, final few corners. Got to keep it tight. Got to keep it clean. And Longe looking like he's got a sensational go of it here. Keeping it nice and tidy. What's this lap time going to be for Matteo Longe? It's pole position. A 9.33. 0.05 of a second faster than Lillian in P2, who I believe is just finishing their lap as well. What's it going to be? Oh, wait, this is the out lap. Never mind. I'm getting too excited. Okay, here we go. For the Frenchman, the championship leader, looking to try and get another pole notched into their tally for this season. Been a stellar season so far, it has to be said, from the Frenchman, but can he cap it off here with another sensational pole position? Well, Matteo Longe has certainly thrown down the gauntlet. See if there can be a French spoiler to this Hungarian party. Oh, no, they can't. They can't. It's wide on the exit. That is an invalidated lap time for Lillian. But Timo Zelenkovic is going to be the one to usurp Matteo Longe by 2 thousandths of a second. That is tight as it gets, folks. Let's see what Andre Molnar is cooking. Let's let him cook into this final sector, keeping it nice and tidy. Making sure that rear isn't stepping out. It was a little bit squiggly in the end of the second sector I caught, but now this is looking mighty fine here from Andre Molnar, getting that power down, driving it to the line, and it is pole position for the Hungarian. It is 9.15, just 0.02 of a second faster. Oh, Rashan Jacobs out of nowhere slots it on pole position with a lap time that demolishes Andre Molnar into the 0.8s. That is really quite something special that we've just seen out of the Dutchman there. The young Dutchman has just flown away with this qualifying session at the Hungaroring. Demircioglu still out on a lap, not going to be troubling anybody or anything. Jensen Randall not going to be doing anything either. So that will be how your order finishes. It is going to be Rashan Jacobs stealing pole position away from Andre Molnar at home. Timo Zelenkovic heads up the second row with Matteo Longe with a very respectable, very commendable 4th position. Lillian, who invalidated on their final run. That is going to be a 5th position for Lillian. Franek Morowiak in the McLaren manages to pull it home for 6th, and that's the first of the 1 minute 15 runners too. Jane Tripkov will round out that row with a 7th place finish. Dehar Demircioglu, season's best, I think, in 8th place with Menno Nielsen. A little bit down on what we've come to expect from the Swede, but still a respectable 9th place, starting within the points, and Korn de Backer rounds out our top 10. But it is Rishan Jacobs, man of the hour. Stark contrast to his teammate and 2nd place finisher, or 2nd place contender in the championship at the moment, Noel Carmen. So that is quite something. Sorry, I just said Menno Nielsen was Swedish. I didn't mean that. I meant he was Dutch. I think I was thinking of Noel Carmen and, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. My apologies. Solo commentary can really get to you sometimes. But anyway, that is how things stand at the end of your qualifying session. It is Rishan Jacobs to take a pole position here at the Hungaroring, and never has there been a track other than Monaco in which pole position can mean so much. Of course, strategy will play a huge factor in the race, as will the weather, if there is any adverse conditions. But for the time being, it is going to be the Dutchman on pole, followed by Andre Molnar, the Hungarian, at home. Tibor Zelenkovic currently occupying 3rd place. So we'll see how this goes, but before then, we'll hop to a tiny little ad break. Please forgive me for shilling out for GT Omega. But you love them, I love them, and here's a quick break. Welcome back, everybody, to the Hungaroring. It is round 9 here of PSGL season 33. I'm excited. You better be excited. We're all very excited. Just waiting for the race to get underway, of course, but for the time being, everything is looking mighty fine, mighty pretty. So, what is that? Well, it's time. It's time to get it underway. We already have 5 red lights and we're off to the races with barely any warning. Straight away, out and we are off. Rishan Jacobs really trying to push Andre Molnar to the inside, but Andre Molnar has had a pretty damn good start. He's going to have that inside line into turn 1, bumping and grinding with Rishan Jacobs. Matteo Longe trying to seize position 2. It's locked wheels. Oh, and that's Zelenkovic. Zelenkovic is in the wall. Another poor start for the Ferrari driver, and it's just gone all kinds of tits up. Now Matteo Longe really trying to tough it out with your pole sitter. Up the hill now. Who's going to blink first? Longe thinks better of it. Andre Molnar into the lead. Clear and away. 0.4 of a second his advantage, but Rishan Jacobs is not going to let sleeping dogs lie. Going to try and maintain that gap, or at least close it down in these opening laps. It's all about who can dictate, who can show the pace from the front of the field. That's a McLaren that was round there. That's Franek Morowiak, who's just gone round. That's also Noel Carmen. And, oh my goodness, Geltech, Boris Plesnikar. What on earth happened there at the chicane? It's going to be a safety car, I believe, if it's not already a VSC. I think it's a full course safety car, though. Can see that there is... oh no, maybe just a safety car? I can't see the yellow dot emerging from the pit lane, so I think it's a VSC. Okay, I got confused by the speed trap symbol on the home straight. So that's a VSC. Yeah, nightmarish start there. We obviously saw Timo Zelenkovic getting tagged and then going round at the first corner into the barrier, losing his front wing. That's an incident also at the back of the field there that is involved. Oh my goodness, Felipe Sousa's got damage, Jensen Randall has damage, Nitro has damage, Timo Zelenkovic, Geltech, Franek Morowiak. That incident also happened to involve Boris Plesnikar, Noel Carmen. That is, I think, about 8 drivers who have been involved in a lap 1 incident here, and the VSC has been brought out to try and rectify this. Franek Morowiak obviously not thinking there's much point in continuing. He is DNFing inside the pit lane. Obviously, with Felipe Sousa also coming in, he was going to have a delayed pit stop, so I completely understand and sympathise with his frustrations there. Zelenkovic, last driver, I think, going to be out of the pit lane here, if I'm not mistaken. He has had a mare getting caught up behind the other Ferrari. And now we're, anyway, back under racing conditions, green flag conditions. There is a big old gap pretty much into the points here. So it's going to have to be a big bridge from about 12th down to 13th. Sorry, I think 10th is also dropping back from P9 just a tad, but 11th is also quite a chasm back. Anyway, Molnar has the restart sorted. Got away with this one rather nicely. Roshan Jacobs just got to make sure he tries and stays in touch. We'll pop the telemetry up. I know people often scream and shout in the chat that they want the telemetry up to see who's got what battery usage. Generally, we don't prefer that on broadcast here, though, at PSGL. It's all about the action, not necessarily about the telemetry. But because I don't have Alex with me tonight, I'll have to just demonstrate the telemetry on screen rather than getting him to talk about it. So, Andre Molnar out in front. Got a great launch off the line. Roshan Jacobs had to really tough it out with Matteo Longay on those opening laps. Speaking of Roshan, nobody really too eager to use battery here. I will mention that using battery around the Hungary ring is not really everyone's favourite thing to do. Battery is very hard to come by around this circuit for lack of big braking zones and long straights. That's generally what recharges the battery on F122. So what you want to be looking for are tracks like Monza that generally recharge the battery well. Tracks like the Hungary ring with flowing corners and not really much heavy braking, not really what you want to see. That's our second retiree of the evening, though. That's Timo Zelenkovic, realizing that he is 10 seconds adrift of an already adrift pack. That is not going to be what they want for him at all. So he is he's going to dip, unfortunately. So, 16 drivers remain. Timo Zelenkovic, car currently entering onto the front straight for some reason. We got green flags. Is Andre Molnar with the fastest lap of the race, a 1:19.5. Already putting some good pace together here for these opening laps on the hard tyres. We're not too far, obviously 5 seconds or so off the qualifying pace as that Ferrari gets out of the way, not causing any more issues, thankfully. Andre Molnar still holding firm. Pretty much everybody in this train holding firm. It is a question of survival, really, once you get slotted in. Is there going to be much opportunity for movement around a track like the Hungary ring? Straight isn't really long enough to make up too much time. But because... Oh, hello. Was that a mistake there out of Andre Molnar? Well, Roshan's going to try it into the chicane. Of course, Molnar will have the inside line. They're going to try and tough it out around the outside. Still sticking with it. Oh, and Roshan, in one of the most complex sectors of the track, has capitalized on a mistake made by Molnar. And now Jacobs leads the field. From pole position, now manages to get himself back up into that P1. That seems to have invigorated Lillian and Matteo Longay as well. There's now starting to get a little bit nosy into whether there is a weakness being shown here by Molnar. The hometown hero not really making it work in these opening laps. Wasn't able to maintain that advantage. And now Jacobs holds position. Is it going to be held, though, onto the start-finish straight? We'll see whether Molnar is going to try and bite immediately back. The battery is being used. It's being deployed quite heavily. Here comes Molnar, straight down the inside. Jacobs has no defense to offer. What has Roshan got to offer up the inside, or the outside, sorry? It's been hung out to dry. A little bit of bump and grind. No DRS being deployed here for Roshan. He doesn't have it. No ERS being deployed by Roshan either. Getting very close under braking, but thankfully has enough car control not to lock up and go into the back of Molnar. So, still looking comfortable, still looking strong, but Molnar back out in front. Going to use more of that battery. That's going to come back to bite him, I imagine, later on in the race. That's a full 30% really deployed from that Alfa Romeo here. So, keep you adrift of all the battery concerns throughout the race, but like I've mentioned before, battery is hard to come by around this Hungary ring circuit. Very, very difficult to recharge because of no braking zones, really. No heavy braking zones and long straights. So you really have to pick your moments when it comes to your battery usage. And I think Roshan is driving with a wise head beyond his years on his shoulders today. Making sure he's conserving that battery. Making sure he's just staying close enough to Molnar in front that it's not too much of a problem if he is just slightly adrift. Of course, 0.5 of a second, closing out a little bit more here, but it will come back down with this DRS usage in the first part of this track. Molnar not using any DRS in order to try and make this, sorry, ERS in order to try and get this gap back up. That's a 3-second time penalty for Gel Tech. Further back of the field. I wouldn't really be too worried about whether that's going to trouble his overall finishing position today. One thing that we do have to keep into consideration here, though, speaking of penalties for Geltec, is going to be the penalties for everybody else on the field this evening. Obviously, this track is very difficult when the tyres start to go off. You start to get a lot of understeer. You start compensating by trying to turn in a bit earlier. You get track limits warnings on exit, track limits warnings on entry. One of those ones where it's very difficult to get it right all of the time. And as such, we're going to have to keep a keen eye over those penalties to see how they're going to end up affecting the race. But for now, Molnar still holding out front. Jacobs not really offering any kind of attack from behind, and Longue not really offering any kind of attack on Jacobs either. So, I think this is where things are going to sit quite comfortably for a little while. As you can see, Roshan, no use in trying to push on for this one. No use in burning the battery. Andre Molnar is not really gaining any battery back. He's up to, what, I think 3% on the previous time across the line. He's really going to have to use nothing if he wants to have anything to defend. Was that a little bit wide there from Matteo Longue? I think I spied in the background, but not wide enough that it invited a nose up the inside from Lillian. So, nothing too worrying here. It's going to be pretty calm, I think, for a little while here. We'll have a look at the tyre situation. There is one man who is usually not too calm, and I just saw him up in 6th place, which is why I thought to look at the tyre situation. Bartosz Zamaro. Generally one who opts for a bit of a different strategy, and with the medium tyres here, you can see that he's done that already. Everybody around him on the hard tyres. He's up 10 places from his original grid spot. Of course, that does involve a massive kerfuffle that happened in the beginning with drivers at the chicane and, of course, Timo Zelenkovic at turn 1. Having said that, though, Bartosz Zamaro going to find it difficult to get a few more moves done as these tyres start to go off. The Hungaroring, with it being a very fast change of direction circuit, is extremely pressing, extremely taxing on tyres. They get very, very warm by the end of that second sector because of all the lateral load being put through them in subsequent successive corners. Super high G load put through those tyres. They get very, very hot. And as such, those medium tyres tend to burn out very, very quickly around this circuit. So it is often a bit of a game about how well you can conserve them. And generally, it's preferred to go to them after you've been on a hard stint when your fuel load is less. And as such, the slip through the tyre is less as well. That's a 3-second penalty for Demircioglu. A little bit of drift at the back of this 9-car train at the moment, but Noel Carman is closing in very, very quickly upon Demircioglu. That would likely be because Carman's just got a little bit more pace that he wasn't able to demonstrate in qualifying. Just a little bit more of a race setup maybe on that Mercedes, and he's desperate for every point he can get, is Carman. The Swede obviously sits second in the championship currently, and would really like to not lose out on second in the championship today. To Molnar, to Jacobs, to Nissen, any of these drivers who are currently in contention for that second place. I will note here, though, Andre Molnar has been putting a little bit of distance, a little bit of daylight every now and again between himself and Roshan Jacobs behind. It's not been so much that Roshan hasn't been able to crunch it back down, but it has been enough that Roshan has had to use at least just a trickle of ERS. You can tell already that he was not sitting as pretty as he was earlier on in the race at around that 97% mark. He's used about 7% of that battery just to make sure he stays in touch with Andre Molnar. Molnar does seem to have some strong race pace here. He is holding station and gaining time on the pack behind him through the corners, especially through sectors 2 and 3. Of course, sector 1, with the assistance of DRS, is always going to be a bit quicker for the likes of Roshan and the pack behind, but Andre Molnar, where it counts, where he can make an advantage, he really is Making hay when the sun shines, as the expression goes. And, well, Andre Molnar quite well versed in his haymaking strategies currently. Rashan Jacobs, though, a little bit closer than he has been on the previous few occasions. That is Demircioglu DNFing in the pits. I'm not sure why. He was running in a respectable 10th place there. Not quite sure why he would have to DNF unless he had made a mistake that was critical to his race outcome. But I hadn't seen anything. I hadn't seen any yellow flags being waved. So that is an interesting retirement there from Demircioglu. Rashan this time, though, keeping it a little bit closer. I'll be interested to see whether he is deploying anything here. I know that Andre Molnar is likely not deploying anything. He wants to make sure he has battery to defend with. But this is where now, about this sector of the lap, the final half of the lap really, is where Molnar has proven to be stronger. Considerably so, actually, over the course of this race so far. Whether that is just because Rashan is looking after his tyres a little bit more and Andre is having to press on because he's at the front of the field, remains to be seen. But you have seen it over this lap. Rashan has just been touching that ERS button just a little bit to make sure that he's not losing out terribly. 0.6 of a second now, the difference between the two of them. Is this a case of Rashan just keeping his powder dry? Or is this a case of him actually just not having the pace that we initially thought that he did in the race here? I mean, 0.3 of a second with the help of DRS it gets back down to, but overshoots braking just a tad in turn 1, so now going to have to try and keep it nice and tidy into turns 2 and 3. Still, this is starting to spread out a little bit. Bartosz Samaro, I feel, is going to become the cork in the bottle further down the field, as we're now 11 laps into those medium tyres. He is starting to suffer. You can see that the gap for him is up to 0.7 of a second. Has battery still to play with should he want to, but why would you? Eventually you're going to be on those hard tyres, and all the hard work that you've done is going to start slowly getting picked apart at the seams by drivers around you who will be on faster tyres. So you might want to have that battery to defend with when that time comes. For now, though, Zamaro really, I think, is going to have to find something to make this stint work. Very, very soon, those medium tyres are going to be screaming, and we're going to start seeing mistakes coming out of him with the rear kicking out, with maybe a little bit of understeering onto track limits warnings. It's got to be one of those things you've got to be careful about here if you're Zamaro, but I know that he's got a wise head on those shoulders at times, and if he wants to be a thinking man's driver, then he has the capacity to be. I've seen him do it before in F4 last season. Strung together a couple of good results towards the end of the season when he got back in his groove, but seems to have reverted back to type here in the start of the season for Formula 3. So I'd be interested to see whether he can get it together here at the end of Formula 3 like he did last season in Formula 4. Anyway, back up the front of the field, Rashan Jacobs is once again very, very close here to Andre Molnar. That first sector doing him wonders, the drag up the hill, all the rest of it. But I fear that they're both basically now going to be on the same battery percentage. So that burst that Andre Molnar used initially to get himself back ahead of Rashan Jacobs has now, that deficit, been overcome. There's no reason to worry about the ERS difference anymore between these two guys. The onus is on Rashan here to make the move work and to keep managing his battery, because Molnar is not really under any threat. He's driving expertly, superbly, especially through this final sector where he just seems to open up that little bit more of a gap. And as such, that 0.5 buffer is enough every time for Rashan Jacobs to just not quite be close enough to make the move with DRS alone. He would have to use ERS in order to make it work. The straight just isn't long enough, frankly enough. So for Rashan, what has he got in the locker? We've seen before that he is strong early on in races, and then the mistakes can start to creep in. We've also seen a couple of instances in which he's been weak at the start of the races, and then he focuses up and starts to find even more pace. So what will it be here for Rashan? Which side of the coin are we getting today? Well, again, a strong first sector from the Mercedes driver, but again, just not enough in this second sector. It makes you think whether he's running a slightly less downforce setup that ends up losing him a bit of time through this middle sector. Maybe when he gets onto those medium tyres and has more grip, it might end up being a little bit better for him. But for the time being, I think just doesn't have what it takes through the corners to maintain a close enough battle with Andre Molnar that he can get ahead. But he's obviously comfortable enough in place. It's pretty much always about 0.6 of a second as they cross the line. So for the time being, the leader's just keeping it nice and chill. Anyway, that cork in the bottle I was speaking of, Bartosz Amaro, no longer has DRS on Menno Nissan in front. Instead, he's lost out. He's over a second behind now and will continue dropping back because, of course, the Williams in front of him has DRS on Lillian. So this is going to be one of those awkward scenarios now for Bartosz Amaro, where he's fighting for his life and really just fighting to keep drivers behind him. It can get a bit scrappy. It might get a bit messy. It certainly will get a bit dangerous. Having said that, though, Korn de Backer, Liam Stevens, and Tripkov behind don't really seem like they have a great deal of urgency to catch up to the rear of Zamaro at the moment, or at least overtake him. He's definitely holding a couple of these guys up, I feel, or could be. I think Korn de Backer might also be filtering into that category. Those medium tyres are not going to be looking pretty at any stretch of the imagination by now. I expect him to be getting these off in the next few laps. Probably not this one, maybe not the next, but about lap 16, 17 maybe. That would be where I'd start to expect him to think about getting rid of these medium tyres, because otherwise he's just going to be in really deep water. In fact, he's getting them off now. He's getting them off a bit early. Wants to go onto these hard tyres. I think he's realised, okay, what more can I do? I'm out of DRS. There's no way I'm going to be able to make up or continue to hold these places. So I might as well just switch onto the hard tyres now. Get set, get sorted, have a bit more of a pace advantage over these guys while I can, and just get busy with it. So on go the hard tyres for Bartosz Zamaro. Meanwhile, let's check back in with his Haas teammate, front of the field. Matteo Longate, sitting pretty, sitting comfortable in third place. He sat there pretty much the entire race and is starting to stretch a little bit of a gap to Frenchman Lillian behind. That is 0.8 of a second that it has been for the most part for Lillian in the last couple of circulations of this circuit. But I don't think we've seen the last of the Frenchman yet. If this season has taught us anything, it's never to discount this man. Even when he has an absolutely dire first couple of laps like he did in Austria, never discount him. He still came back for a podium there. So bang tidy up the fronts. Nothing really happening for these guys. They're all stuck in this DRS train that goes back as far as Menno in P5. But Korn de Backer now becomes the cork in the bottle that was once Bartosz Zamaro. So let's see what Korn de Backer has got. That is Bartosz Zamaro spinning, actually, I think. No damage as far as I can see, but that has certainly laid waste to his chances of finding any measurable success inside of this race now. Oh dear, that's really quite a shame to see. Anyway, we'll see whether he can recover anything. I don't know what happened, whether there was a mistake or some collision. But either way, Korn de Backer losing touch quite considerably from that leading quintet now. I think they have a little bit more pace than he does. And generally, I think we're going to see this gap, come down and down and down. So for Korn de Backer, P6 at best, but I think Liam Stevens, he's shown before that he has some really good pace to offer. Generally, Liam seems to be a little bit more confident when he goes onto the grippier tyres. Generally has a bit of a more pace advantage over the other drivers when he is on the mediums towards late race pace. But, I mean, this is also a good result for Liam Stevens so far. Second last time out in Mexico. Looking to try and do the same again, or at least get another respectable result on a very different style of circuit. So far, so good for all these guys. At least they haven't made any massive mistakes, haven't been involved in any accidents. So far, it's looking just okay for everybody involved. Of course, Noel Carman, who was involved in one of those earlier incidents at the chicane, he now sits in 9th place since Bartosz Zamaro has pitted. That's a solid recovery for the second place man in the championship, but unfortunately for the moment, he's not going to be gaining any time on the guys in front of him. In fact, he's probably going to continue to lose it. So maybe an early pit stop for Noel, maybe hoping for a safety car, whichever one it is, got to come soon for him. Anyway, for Roshan up front, it is again 0.3 of a second through that first sector. Very close into the chicane again. This is where he was able to strike last time. There was a slight mistake from Andre Molnar that enabled him to come through at the inside of the chicane. They managed to get through it pretty cleanly, but this here is where Molnar is strong. His setup, or whatever it is, his driving style, allows for him to just take that little bit more corner speed, take that little bit more risk as well on the track limits. And he feels confident doing so. Opens that gap back up again by 0.2 of a second, nearly 0.3 of a second as we round into the final corner. So it is a game of swings and roundabouts here for these two guys. Snakes and ladders. And we've seen the first snake shoot up the ladder of the pit lane. It is Matteo Longay getting off of these hard tyres as fast as he possibly can. Into the pits he comes to be the first driver to get onto the mediums. Let's see where he comes out. We've also seen Korn de Bakker, who, as you remember, was holding up a little bit and getting dropped by the front quintet. Well, he now too drops into the pit lane, so we'll see whether this undercut can work. To be honest, around this track where there is so few opportunities for overtaking, the undercut seems like the obvious strategy. It seems like the one that can gain you the most time and gain you the most places, especially if these guys up front just continue fighting their own race. They might stay out for 1, 2, maybe even 3 laps longer. We've seen it happen before. Roshan, a couple of weeks ago, I think in China, bottled his strategy by doing exactly that, just staying out a tad too long. So we'll see whether it's true here. Are these guys going to dive into the pits now? They've seen, of course, that Matteo Longay has done so. That looks like it's going to be coming in for both these drivers. Molnar, Roshan, Lillian staying out. Of course, he has to, really. He doesn't want to be caught up with Andre Molnar. I thought that was going to be speeding in the pit lane there. That looked way too fast. But Lillian, of course, doesn't want to be held up by Molnar in the pits, so has to now go for an extra lap. Let's see what Lillian elects to do on this lap. He's used a lot of battery already, and he's only going to be using more here to try and basically temper the deficit he's ultimately going to have from this undercut. He knows this is not the ideal strategy for him, so he's going to have to try and make do with what he's got. It's going to be a stonking lap on the most part with all the battery that's being used, but it's going to have to try and be as clean as possible. That's a tad wide, so that'll be a track limits warning, one imagines, for Lillian there, providing that they're still as stingent as I've always experienced them to be. Tidy again through the chicane though. Lillian always good through slow speed stuff. We've seen him really gain a lot of time through these types of corners, but it's where the fast stuff kicks in now. Is this where Lillian has the pace? Is this where he can contend, especially when we're coming onto these medium tyres shortly? Lots of drivers pitting in for these mediums now. You can have a look. Air is your tyre situation for most everybody on track. Nitro out on track with the mediums. Jensen Randall back out on track with the mediums. But of course, the ones we need to look out for: Matteo Longay, Andre Molnar, Roshan Jacobs. And by the way, Matteo Longay, who has overtaken Roshan Jacobs and will put him into an early, well, net P3 here. We'll see where Lillian comes out, but this is a spicy looking Matteo Longay here. He knows that right in this moment he can snatch the race lead away from Andre Molnar. Is he going to attempt it? That's the question. Battery going to be deployed here for Matteo Longay. It's a fastest lap of the race as well for Matteo Longay. But Andre Molnar not going to be deterred at this point in time. Molnar has still a healthy chunk of battery left compared to Longay, who really did press on that outlap to get ahead of Jacobs. Lillian still comes out net P4 here, so no improvement really for Lillian, but will have that lap or two fresher tyres over his competitors at the end of the race. So the undercut works for one man. Matteo Longay, sorry. Nearly went for his brother there, but it is going to be Matteo Longay who ends up being the beneficiary of the undercut. Whether it will actually be ending up beneficial in the long run with that huge chunk of battery that he ate to get to this point, we'll soon see. Roshan also using a bit of battery now to try and get past Longay. I think he realises that this is going to be the moment in which he needs to actually pull the pin on this one. If he wants to try and have a chance at winning this race, wants to try and have a chance at getting to Molnar, he needs to dispatch with Longay as soon as possible. So, is this where we're going to see a move, or is this where we're going to see Molnar under threat from Longe again? I don't think so. It's another 5/10 gap. That massive... Oh, big slide. Bit too close to the curb. Bit too close to the wall there for Roshan Jacobs. You're not going to lose out too much, buddy, so don't worry about pressing that ERS button all that much. Longe is close, but I don't think going to be close enough to put a move together on Molnar just yet. I think this is going to be another one of those moments now where we just settle in for a nice little bit of chill out and watch them drive. That is Nitro with the fastest lap of the race, a 1:17.7, but of course down in P14, he will not score a point for that fastest lap. Oh no, that's not what you want to see at all. Matteo Longe, net P2 currently, worked hard as hell on that undercut to get into P2, has now been given a 3-second time penalty for multiple track limits violations. I said they were coming. I said those track limits warnings will start to accumulate, and this is about the point in the race now where you'd start to expect that kind of thing really becoming a factor. And there it is, the first of many, I assume, for Matteo Longe. He's going to be the first victim. 3 seconds for him currently knocks him out of the podium positions and down into P5. So let's hope for his sake that the drivers around him get some penalties as well, that this can be a fair fight. Roshan Jacobs looking really feisty through this first sector to try and make a move on Matteo Longe. Of course, trying to replicate the one that he did earlier on Andre Molnar, but there's just no room at the inn here this time for Roshan. So what is going to be on the offering? Well, for now, not much. About the ERS situation, 52% still not really got that much battery to play with, but it is still going to be more than Matteo Longe, who is down as low as 20% at the moment. Andre Molnar also about to have only his second taste of DRS this race, as he is going to find a Noel Carman starting to interrupt things. And if Molnar can get by Noel Carman on this lap, it's going to be tight. Carman defending it, actually. Essentially trying to help his teammate out a little bit. Carman fighting it all the way down to turn 2. It's going to be a tight run, but on these medium tyres, you've got to anticipate that Molnar can get by in some way somehow, but Carman is doing a sterling defense job here on the hard tyres. This is reminiscent of Hamilton and Alonso on these different tyre compounds. It is bunching this front 5 up now. Carman definitely the cork in the bottle here, and they're all going to have to dispatch him as fast as they possibly can if they don't want to lose touch with one another. Carman really the fly in the ointment here, doing everything possible to be a disruptor by the looks of things. I think understanding that his race is run, so just trying to make it so that Lillian, or at least the guys who he's in contention with for the championship positions, are losing points to one another. That would be my guess. At the very least, Carman has kept them behind for a whole lap now. It's not going to last much longer, because into this DRS straight coming up, the final straight, the front straight, there's going to be a wealth of chaos coming up. I'm not sure whether that will... I think it will give DRS to Molnar as he crosses the line. He does have that wing open, I think, so I don't think it will be a big thing. But there is a big thing coming on here at the back. It's swerving violently to the inside and to the out. Longe on the inside, Jacobs on the outside. Longe now full second foul to Roshan, and is going to have to concede the position. Oh, a quick tap in the rear, but thankfully nothing too damaging. Roshan does not lose any grip or any time in that move, but that opens the door now for Lillian. He sees that red light blinking on the rear of that Haas, and he wants a piece of the action too. He recognises, of course, that Longe has that 3-second time penalty, but that isn't going to stop him from hunting down his prey. Lillian has been ruthless all season long, and now we're going to see that ruthless killer instinct once again. These guys fighting for every point, every inch of track that they can get around this Hungary Grand Prix circuit. It is one of those circuits that's narrow, it's Nadgery, it's tight, there's not a great deal of overtaking opportunity, but when there is, you best believe that they're all going to try and take it. Lilian keeping in close contest here with Longe. Let's take a look at that battery situation for Lilian. It is 37%, plays, what is that, 13% for Longe. So Lilian here has a great opportunity to try and snatch away this P3 on track as well with the penalty. Here it comes. The battery's being deployed, pretty much all of it, but not going to be close enough. It's a bit of a lunge in towards turn 1. Longe has to get out of the corner a little bit, but now the run in towards turn 2. I think Lilian just has that smidgen more battery, but the inside line being held, not being yielded here by Longe. Just trying to keep his nose in there to be as much of a threat for as long as possible, but Lilian eventually will see him off. That's a lot of battery used, though, for the French driver. And as such now, is that going to impact him in maybe staying in touch with this front 2? Well, Lilian, wealth of experience this season, won races pretty much from the second he arrived as a reserve driver. And now Rishan up the front. What's he got to try and contend with Andre Molnar on these medium tyres? We thought maybe there might be a little bit more pace from Rishan. Now these mediums are in. A bit more grip, maybe offsets his deficit in downforce throughout this second and third sector. I mean, for the time being, that's another 3-second time penalty for Matteo Longe, and all that fighting and all that scrapping, he seems to have accumulated another track limits warning, and that will comfortably set him outside of contention for a good points finish now. For Rishan, though, not getting goaded into using any battery here, not getting trapped into deploying everything. I mean, Molnar still holds a healthy advantage, and as I say that, Rishan does go for a little dab on the ERS deployment button. He's got to try and keep things close as he can throughout this first sector, just to make sure he doesn't lose so much through the second and third. If he can have a strong second and third sector here, he will be putting himself in a great position to try and make the overtake, because he does look a little bit faster in a straight line. This is where Molnar gets away from him. Just watch that Alfa Romeo. Let's see whether that Alfa Romeo can put some more daylight between Molnar and Jacobs. So far, so good. It's 0.4 of a second, extending up to 5. The exit off of that fast right kink, so strong. And then again, off of the slower speed corners, it seems that Molnar is just able to get it in there a bit better and get it out there a bit better. But Rishan really hustling it on this lap, really trying to work the steering wheel, get the car biting into the apex. He's not losing as much time as he was now, but with that little bit of ERS usage, you've got to imagine that Molnar is going to have more than enough to defend with when the time comes. Of course, that's now down 0.2 of a second. It's closer than it has been for the last couple of circulations, but still Molnar holds the line. You can hear the roar of that Ferrari engine inside of that Alfa Romeo now. It's starting to get just that bit closer. Noel Carman, after holding these guys up for laps upon laps, is now getting fastest lap of the race titles. He's back in 9th position, 12 seconds to Tripkov, and I don't think he's going to make up that gap in 7 laps. So for Coleman, second place in the championship, surely going to be relinquished today from him. But back up the front, where his teammate lies, Rishan Jacobs, 0.2 of a second now through the second sector. That's what you want to see from the Dutchman. You want to see him closer. You want to see him making it work. And so far, it is looking mighty good. Loses a little bit, though, as always, down that back straight. And a little bit of a squirrely moment on the exit curb. A little bit wide again in the penultimate corner. He's lost quite a chunk of time in just those 2 corners alone. He's going to have to use a bit of battery, one imagines, to get back up to the rear wing of Molnar as he was previously. Never mind, is this a move on here? He's got a mega drive off that final corner. Molnar has left the door open for him. He wasn't really alongside. He was playing the game with him. They lock wheels, and now up the outside is going to have to go Rishan. He's got, I think, slightly newer tyres than Molnar. I could be wrong, actually. In fact, I probably am. But up the inside into turn 3. And that is Rishan Jacobs taking the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix for the second time. Last time this happened, he wasn't able to keep Molnar behind. Let's see whether he can do it this time around. Molnar been famously strong throughout this race in the second and third sector. Just been really, really good at keeping that minimum apex speed up. And it's same again here. He's lost a tad to Roshan Jacobs, but of course has more battery available to him. And of course has historically been faster through this sector of track. This time though, the slip off the corner, not quite going to be good enough, but a dirty air maybe affecting the Alfa Romeo here. 25% battery, used a fair amount of battery in defending Jacobs, it looked like, on that previous time around. Felipe Sousa picks up a 3-second time penalty, but that's not important right now. What is important is the front of the field here, as now that's a decent gap for Roshan Jacobs. It looks like Andre Molnar is going to have to use a fair whack of battery if he wants to try and make this move work. Up the inside, it's very, very tight up the inside. That's a very narrow line that Jacobs is going to have to take, but it's all snappy on exit. It's not clean at all for Molnar. Tried to dart back across to the left when he realised there was no room at the in and just didn't quite position the car correctly. So that's a big waste of potential there from Molnar, and that leaves him potentially under threat from his much more wealthy in terms of ERS teammate Lillian, who is desperately looking down his rear wing now, just 1/10 of a second behind. It's on here for the Frenchman. Frenchman still staying close in touch, whereas out front, Roshan Jacobs is actually doing almost the inverse of what we've seen him doing throughout the course of this race so far. He's the one making the gap out front now, and it's looking somewhat comfortable for him as well. But is there something going to be offered here from Lillian? No ERS deployment just yet. He's just sitting in the wheel tracks of the Alfa Romeo out front. I guess maybe just waiting for his opportune moment to strike, seeing if Roshan can give him a window of opportunity maybe by dragging himself out of that DRS range. Maybe he doesn't have to use that battery. Maybe he can use it defensively instead when the time comes. Lillian just playing the waiting game for now. Not pushing on too hard, not making any mistakes, seeing whether his competitors ahead of him will. And then when the time comes, as he has done so many times before, he'll make the move. He'll make that strike. This is great, though, so far from Roshan. Looks like he has saved a little bit in reserve here. 7/10 of a second now. The gap between he and Andre Molnar. We'll have a look at the ERS stakes. Again, Jacobs with a little bit more than Molnar here, so does have some if he makes a mistake and needs to defend. The Mercedes man has been there or thereabouts all season long. Been there or thereabouts all race long. Now, he's looking like he is there or thereabouts for this race too. Certainly strong with it. 5/10 of a second as they cross the line. It will be enough in this time in 4 laps. But what about Lillian? What about Lillian? The Frenchman must have made a mistake or something there as he's lost some ground to his teammate. Starting to fan out a bit here at this front 5. What once was with Menno has become a front 4. They've lost Menno in all of their scrapping and all their picking up of the pace. Lillian closing back in here in this first sector. Going to have to do a little bit more, though. Wants to be right on the gearbox of his teammate, really, as they get in towards that penultimate corner, just so he has the opportunity to get the drive out of that final corner and not be too far behind that he has to use all of his battery to try and do it. Lillian's looking good right here, though. This is looking like a strong lap put together so far. I mean, just 3/10 of a second as they enter into the final sector. Just try and get these final couple of corners right, and you might be in the money with something here. Of course, though, Lillian, we know what he's like. He probably won't go for that overtake until the last available opportunity, so there won't be an opportunity to strike back. It just depends on what his ambitions are. Is he ambitious for the race win, or is he going to be looking just for the second place podium here? I mean, right now, just sitting in the slipstream, no ERS being used. Keeping it nice and tidy, keeping it tucked in, keeping his powder dry, most importantly. Not showing his hand. Going to try and force the raise out of Andre Molnar. Try and force the mistake. Meanwhile, out front, Roshan is just calling, checking out. Relaxed head on the shoulders of that young Dutch driver. We're also going to start to get to a point in which tyres may be a factor here. Lillian, of course, did stop a lap later. I'm not sure whether the one lap is really going to make all the difference inside of this one. But it is something just to note. One lap difference in the tyres between Lillian and the two drivers ahead of him. But even still, for your championship leader, this would be an absolutely stellar result. His championship rivals, who are 40 points adrift of him as good as. Noel Carmen, the closest at 36 points back going into this meeting, is in 9th, not scoring a wealth of points back down there. So this will give Lillian a great opportunity to wrap the championship up completely, as it is 16 points for a win. And with this race, or with only 2 races left after this one, that only provides 32 points worth of opportunity remaining. So I think Lillian can win the championship here, actually, providing that this result goes his way in any kind of good way. I think Roshan and Andre Molnar still pose a threat, but only if Molnar can get a race win under his belt here. So we'll see what the final laps have in store for us here at the Hungaroring. It's hotting up, it's spicing up. It's lap 33 of 35. We got 2 more to go. Well, 2.5 more to go, I suppose you should say. Because now, Roshan, again, healthy advantage at the front. 7.5 tenths of a second. Andre Molnar feeling pressured from behind and feeling like this race might be slipping away from him out front. You can see on the steering wheel and now on the display, not much ERS to play with if you are the Hungarian. Meanwhile, the Frenchman behind has plenty of battery, nearly 40% worth of battery. But when is the Frenchman going to make his move? Is it going to be this lap or the next? Well, for the time being, no ERS deployment out of the Frenchman. Lillian keeping again to just reserve that battery for another lap. And then he'll do it on the final time of asking. And when we cross that start-finish straight for the final time, that'll be it. That'll be the one for Lillian when he makes his move. He's looking for a second-place finish here. He just needs to get ahead of his teammate Andre Molnar, I think, to wrap up the championship here today at the Hungaroring. But for now, Roshan Jacobs out front, looking like he's pretty much uncontested for the moment. It's still 0.5 tenths of a second, and anything can happen in racing. But he has had this under control for the majority of the race so far. He has got a battery advantage over his competitor behind him in Andre Molnar. Doesn't seem like there's going to be too many more opportunities for Molnar to take this race win away from Jacobs if he has anything left in the locker. So we'll ride with him on this final, or this penultimate lap, to see what he's got, whether you can get close enough this time around, because this is the only chance he's going to get, barring a mistake from the Mercedes man. This is going to be it. Is there going to be the DRS available to him? Is he going to be close enough? He's going to be under threat from Lillian behind as well. Let's just take a look at that battery one last time. It's 13% going into the home straight. Lillian 0.5 tenths of a second back, but what's the drive off the corner going to be like? Lillian's throwing it all in here. All chips in. He's all in for it. It's a strong run, but it's not going to be enough. All the battery deployment in the world isn't going to be able to get you close enough from 0.5 tenths of a second down on somebody who already has DRS. It's going to be a close run. But once again, not enough for Lillian. He feigns to the inside to try and see if he can force a mistake out of Molnar, who's surely going to be driving in his mirrors at this point. Lillian trying everything to try and snatch away this P2 from his teammate, but for the time being, nothing going. Molnar holding strong, knowing that all he has to do is just drive these next couple of corners super clean, and there won't be many opportunities remaining for Lillian without making some brash dive bomb that'll end up hurting them both. So does he just take the 3rd place? Does he just take the podium? Or does he try and go for it? Is there a gap that's going to exist? Well, we'll soon find out. The last real opportunity for overtaking is about to be here. End of this straight into this little right-hander. It's not really long enough, and he's not really close enough, is Lillian. And that surely will be curtains for the Alfa Romeo man. He's going to lose out to his teammate today, but it is a solid race, but an even better one at that. From Roshan Jacobs, from pole to the win, it is a masterclass in Hungary for the Dutchman. 2nd place comes home with Andre Molnar. Hungary does get a spot on the podium today with Lillian in 3rd. Matteo Longe gets relegated all the way down to 8th, with Menno Nielsen taking down 4th place. Liam Stevens, great recovery drive into 5th. Korn de Backer cleans up 6th. Jane Tripkov in 7th. Longe 8th. Noel Carman in 9th, with Boris Plesnikar probably taking home 10th. And that will be your points finishes for today. Bartosz Samaro, another disappointing result from the alternate strategy. That spin can't have helped either, but that's 11th for him outside the points. Jensen Randall in 12th, Geltech 13th, Felipe Sousa ends up coming home in 14th because Nitro gets a penalty that puts him in 15th. So that's your race, folks. That's all, as they say. A sensational race from Rishan Jacobs, the Mercedes driver, back on top. Great to see. But I don't know the maths exactly, but I think that race may crown Lilian as our champion this season. There you have it then, your official classification for the end of the Hungarian Grand Prix. It is going to be Rishan Jacobs, a great victory for him. A solid second place for Andre Molnar. Disappointed, of course, that he wouldn't have been able to get it, but 3 places up for Lilian from his starting position. Great finish, and likely the championship in it as well. Penalties and obviously results withstanding. Let's take a quick look to see what that would have done. It would be, I think, 12 points for Andre... Oh, never mind. Andre Molnar, not a championship contender, actually, I think. So I think that does wrap the championship for Lilian. So there we have it. I think Lilian champion with 3 rounds to spare, or 2 rounds to spare. Next time out will be Saudi Arabia. So join us for Jeddah, same time next week. We'll see you then. Have a great evening.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega, proudly supporting PSGL.